An amazing landing on a North Carolina freeway. A helicopter almost bites the dust. And an update on the Snodgrass crash. This and more today on Taking Off. Welcome to Taking Off. I'm Christy Wong. Today's episode is sponsored by Flying Eyes Optics, Colton Mortgage, and Marshall Protective Services. We're going to talk about that amazing emergency landing in North Carolina, but before that, a quick update on the Dale Snodgrass tragedy. This past week, the NTSB released the final report on the tragic crash of a very highly respected pilot, Dale Snodgrass, on July 24, 2021. Dale was an airshow aviator and had flown in the Navy with the call sign Snort. He had 6,500 hours as a civilian at his last medical. Juan Brown at Blanco Lirio has a great in-depth look at this accident, and you can watch it here. So I'm not going to get too into the details. Bottom line is the cause of this accident was that the control lock was left in place. On the Italian Marchetti, the control lock is a big red painted loop that goes over the rudders, and while it allows for rudder movement on taxi, it prevents the ailerons and elevator usage. Basically, Snodgrass took off with the elevator and ailerons locked, and how that can happen is pretty clear. Failure to use checklist or do a thorough pre-flight. Actions like control lock removed and flight controls free and correct went missed. This was a seasoned veteran pilot. Here's a pilot that people could argue is a better pilot than you or me combined, and yet he died on a simple failure. Something we learned day one as a student. So here's my takeaway. When I'm tired and think I can skip the checklist, I'm going to remember Snodgrass. It can happen to the best of us. We are sending our best to Snort's family and loved ones. Moving on to something more positive. This image is busting the internet. The James Webb Space Telescope has sent its first picture. Named after former NASA administrator James Webb, the telescope has the ability to study objects near and far and get a clearer look into other galaxies. The light in this photo traveled 13 billion years to get to the James Webb Telescope. And if that wasn't cool enough, here's a cool fact. The telescope was built with the lead team from Northrop Grumman. That's right, I said Grumman. The same people that made Brian's little Grumman Traveler. You know, the one that the Wong Warrior beat in a race. If only Piper had applied itself to the space race. Ah, what could have been. Remember when you were a fairly new pilot, freshly minted certificate in hand? I look back at those days and remember just how little I knew crossing the 100-hour line. I was nervous that something could go wrong at any moment, and I always wondered how I would handle it. Well, something did happen to new pilot Vince Frazier. On July 3rd, while piloting a 1967 Aero Commander 100 over the North Carolina skies, his engine suddenly lost power at just 5,000 feet. Not really having many other options and surrounded by very hilly terrain, he wound up landing in between cars and power lines on a 4-lane highway, and he caught the entire incident on camera. The Aero Commander 100 has a similar high-wing design as the Cessna 172. There's a 3-seater version as well as a 4-seater version, and it usually comes with a Lycoming 0320 engine producing 150 horsepower. That'll give it a maximum speed of around 116 knots, so it could also beat Brian's Grumman. The Aero Commander 100 was originally made by Aircraft in 1960 and then sold to Rockwell for their Aero Commander division. But by 1971, Rockwell decided the light aircraft market was too competitive and they stopped production. Only 212 of these aircraft were ever built before production ended, and then they became the Darter Commander. Lycomings are generally regarded as pretty reliable engines, so why did Vince's engine suddenly die? After careful inspection, AMPs found that a fuel line in the wing became plugged, so just 3 days later, and after a good repair job done, Vince was able to take off and get the airplane back to Macon County Airport, a 7-minute flight away. Great job to Vince and his awesome piloting skills. It's funny, I actually just celebrated the 5th anniversary of earning my private pilot certificate, and I realized that I've never had a true emergency in any piston aircraft. I've been very lucky, but if you've had an emergency and would like to share your story, leave your comment below, and we can always use more pilot stories. More on that in a bit. Speaking of potential emergencies, holy helicopter. This last week, a Eurocopter went out of control during a maintenance operation in France. It appears in the video that the helicopter was removing one of the frames from a lighthouse lantern when it became unbalanced. The pilot momentarily lost control when they jumped forward and nose down. You can see in the video, that's when the helicopter's emergency flotation devices deployed. Fortunately, after some careful maneuvering and I'm sure a new pair of shorts, the pilot was able to recover. However, the incident left one person on the lighthouse property injured. There's conflicting reports on exactly how that happened, but we just hope it wasn't something too serious and that they have a speedy recovery. Which leads me to my next question, fixed wing or rotor wing? I know that Dan's been really interested in getting his helicopter ratings, but I'm more of a fixed wing pilot. Admittedly, I've always been intimidated by helicopters, but what do you guys think? Now for something a little fun. The aviation social group, Airplanes and Coffee, has recently started a trend where pilots flex or show off their different aspects of aviation. It's been really interesting to see everyone's contributions, but I just hope it doesn't start becoming the new meow of social media. That's one trend I'm glad to see die off. Either way, what's something you'd like to flex? I'm sure you guys know what my flex is. Finally, we're officially in the final countdown until Oshkosh Airventure 2022. This is even more exciting for me because I've sadly missed the last 2 years. 2020 because, well, it was 2020, and last year I missed it because I was in training for work when I was recalled after the furlough. So this year I've got pent-up Airventure fever. Make sure you check the NOTAMs. We'll post a link directly to it in the description below. I'm going to do it right and start with the warm-up, wings over Whiteside. I love that the city of Rock Falls, Illinois decided to put on an air show for their community. You'll see headliners like Patty Wagstaff, the Trojan Flyers, Betsy's Biscuit Bomber, and a whole lot more there. I'm planning on being there to represent the Taking Off team, so if you see me, please stop and say hi. The air show is Saturday, July 23rd, and it's just a hop, skip, and jump away from Oshkosh. For Airventure, Dan and I, along with some of your other favorite aviation peeps, will be doing a meet and greet on Monday, July 25th from 2:30 to 4 p.m. at Forum Stage 8. We'll also be filming episodes of In the Hangar at the Flying Eyes booth, and we'll be shooting more episodes of pilot stories. So if you've got a dramatic pilot story and you'd like to share, swing by and let us know. We'd love to meet you regardless. And speaking of Flying Eyes, as well as our other sponsors, we thank you for your incredible support. Flying Eyes makes sunglasses and ophthalmics that fit super comfortably under headsets and helmets. You can use discount code TAKINGOFF, all caps, one word, for 10% off your purchase on their website. Also, a special thank you to Colton Mortgage, a residential mortgage company run by an aviator just like us. So if you happen to need a mortgage or a refi, keep it in the aviation family. You won't regret it. And also, to our sponsor, Marshall Security Services, thank you for your continued support. It's our awesome sponsors that allow us to keep making aviation comment. And it also helps when you like, subscribe, and share our videos. Thank you everyone for supporting our channel, and we'll see you at Airventure.